Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another New Jersey Constitutional Republican virtual conversation. This is one that is long overdue with my good friend and brother, Tom Crone. Tom, thank you for joining me tonight.
Very great to be with you. It's been looking forward to this for a little while now. It's finally got it to work.
Now, Tom is the executive director of Camden County Republican Organization. And Tom, tell the audience a little bit about yourself for those who may not be familiar with you. Give us a brief bio about yourself, if you would.
Well, originally from Philadelphia, row home, Philadelphia. Born and raised there. Spent time in the Philadelphia Republican Party as member of the Republican City Committee, which is where I kind of cut my teeth and did some things over there. And left Philadelphia for greener pastures and ended up in the great state of New Jersey about 20 years ago and got involved here at that time. Been a committee man here in New Jersey, involved in my hometown here in Gloucester Township. Been with the Republican Party for a long time. Back in Philadelphia, I actually ran for city council back in 1995. Everybody should do it one time. I'll never do it again. But, it's easy to talk to candidates now, actually having been one. A lot of people don't know that. It was a long time ago in a different place, but you learn the ins and outs. The corruption, in Philadelphia politics was a little more subtle than the corruption we have here in New Jersey politics. It's just laid bare for the most part, with Governor Murphy and Democrats absolutely just not caring one way or the other. So, today I'm, the executive director of the Camden County Republican Party. I've been on the outside, with them. I've been that patriot guy who really wanted them to be more conservative and less mainstream or middle of the road. Fought with them, didn't wander away, didn't take my blocks and go someplace else. Kept pushing and pushing and pushing till now. I get to help set the agenda, and we get to set that patriot agenda here as the conservatives now run Camden County. And that can happen anywhere. It's the bluest county. We'll get an argument from somebody somewhere, but this is the bluest county in the state of New Jersey as far as we're concerned, especially here in Norcross country. It's very blue. We're working to change that. We had some good luck in this past election where we picked up 4 council seats, and as we're talking here, you're going to learn my philosophy on elections. It's not the presidency, it's not the House, it's not the U.S. Senate, it's not even the governor and the legislature. It's your school boards and your local councils. That's where we have to have huge pickups, because that's where the taxes are being spent egregiously, and that's where education comes in. And it's not the funding of education that I worry about. It's the indoctrination that has now replaced education. And that's important. We don't have people running for school board. That's not glamorous. Everybody wants to run for something exciting and glamorous. We don't run for office because it's exciting and glamorous. You run because you have a calling and you want to be a servant of the people. And we need to find that special person to do that. And once you're there, you can't just rest on your laurels. You got to be tough, and we're looking for that, and we're going to continue to look for that. So the 4 individuals that we elected to councils in 4 different towns, we're going to look at this next election cycle coming up in 2021 to elect even more, 8 more, and that's how it begins. You got to get that process going, and I'm going to pick up the school boards as well, and that's how we make the changes that we need to change.
Well, it's a great start to our conversation, and I could think of no better man who I would want in a heavily Democratic district leading the Republican Party than you, Tom. And of course, over the years, we've gotten to know each other. We have a lot of familiar and like interests, which we'll get into with the conversation. But you did spend a lot of time with this past election at the Board of Elections there in Camden County. Give me your thoughts on your experience this election cycle. And secondly, what needs to be done to shore up the election process? Because there are millions and millions of Americans right now, Tom, that are not very confident in the election process. And this is a catastrophe um, of great proportion. So give us your thoughts on your experience and what we need to do to solidify the election process.
Well, I'll speak specifically for Camden County. Camden County is one of the few counties in New Jersey that actually has a fully bipartisan staff. Now, by law, they have to have equal numbers of commissioners. There's 2 Republican and 2 Democrat commissioners in each county's election board. In Camden County, it's been this way for many years, and they're looking to continue this. We have a bipartisan staff. So for every Democrat that holds a position, there's a Republican that holds that same equal position. So there is a check and a balance of not only the commissioners, you have a check and balance of the staff. And that's something different and something that's key. So most people have no idea what happens at your local board of elections or superintendent's office. And in Camden County specifically, the superintendent's office was actually merged with the Board of Elections. So we have a commissioner of registration, which would be the old superintendent's office, and then the election side, which would handle vote by mails, machines. In my case, I work with board workers. I recruit and train board workers, Republicans, do other things within the office itself. But the main thing is that we get good people to work on election day and to be stewards of the people's process. And that's the job that we have. This past election, with the governor's edict for these unsolicited ballots to be sent out to 6 million voters in the state of New Jersey, became a daunting task. In Camden County alone, we had 350,000 ballots went out, and close to 240,000 came back. And that required, 7 days a week, 12, 15 hours a day, every day, just to make that happen. And a lot of people don't understand, what, especially the governor. That's what I say. The governor has no idea what he did. He went ahead and said, well, we're just going to do this. How difficult can it be? Well, it was very difficult. It was absolutely very difficult. We took our regular staff, we bulked that up prior to it, and then we had to add a lot of temporary help to that. And we still have temps in the office trying to clean up after the election. We're still working on it. There's a lot of paperwork that came in that people don't see what goes on behind the scenes. We also had the National Guard come in for several weeks and help us do what we needed to do. It's a crazy thing. So what I can speak to in Camden County, your vote is protected. We make it very clear to everyone that we talk to. The process for your vote by mail ballot that comes in is locked into a vault where 4 people on a staff of more than 20 have access to that vault and have keys to it. 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. It's just like a missile silo. You need each key to get into that vault where the ballots are kept. And there's video cameras on it. It is surveilled. It is watched. We watched ourselves. There's no one doing anything funky or funny in there. The ballot room also is under surveillance. There's that equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats while they're counting ballots, running through the machines. And we also had machines out in the field. Of the 300 polling locations that we typically have, we had about 150 of them open. So we still had a lot of polling locations that we had to deal with. So the governor did no one any favors, whether it was the voters that was running for office or those of us who had to work the election. Did us no favors. There was no protection from COVID. There was no protection from anything. People were out there voting. And if you can go to Walmart, and this is personal now. This is not me as a appointee of the Board of Elections. This is just me. But I can go to Walmart and I can push the touchpad for my purchase. Why can't I push the button in the machine? And that's a question that needs to be answered.
And also, Tom, the fact is that and we've seen this not only in New Jersey, but in other democratically led states, the changes to the election procedures that occurred initially because of the pandemic, changes that were initiated that had no constitutional authority. The state constitution nowhere gives the governor of New Jersey the authority to require mail-in only voting. And the legislature was hapless. The Supreme Court, of course, can't get involved unless there's litigation involved. But this whole situation needs to be rectified to where the governor cannot make these unilateral decisions based upon lack of authority, lack of constitutional authority to do what he did. And you just said something about we can go into Walmart, we can go to the liquor store, we can go to other areas legally or without any sort of edict saying that we can't populate these areas or use these areas, but yet we can't go vote, and yet we can't go to the small business store or the restaurant down in the corner. I mean, these arbitrary acts based upon executive orders have no constitutional authority whatsoever, and it had a detrimental effect with the elections, not only in New Jersey and areas, but throughout the country. And it's all because of the lack of constitutional authority given the governor, and the people not knowing what the Constitution says, and not even the elected representatives, Tom, knowing what the Constitution says. Because if they did, there'd be a lot more outcry on Murphy's ordering mail-in balloting only.
Well, there's no argument there. That's 100% spot on. And the legislature in New Jersey abrogated its responsibility and its constitutional authority to be a check and a balance on the governor at this point. And on several, well, the courts, we're not even going to get into that. We're just going to talk about the legislature for a second. How many times did, the Republican minority bring legislation up, and not only was it ignored, they didn't even bring it for a vote. They refused to bring it to the floor for any type of vote, to let Democrats be on the record of voting to continue the power grab by the governor. And that, there's no other way of putting it. This was a unilateral power grab by the governor, and Democrats, who control both houses of our legislature, decided, well, we're going to let them do it. We just don't care, because we have no integrity. We have no spine. And we're going to allow him to do this. We can go back to our districts and go, well, we didn't do it. The governor did that. That was, that was the governor. And we can blame the president because the president did this. Donald Trump has nothing to do with what happens in the state of New Jersey. Donald Trump has nothing to do with what goes on in your town, in Gloucester Township specifically, whatever town you live in, Camden County, Bergen County, Hudson County. The governor and the state legislature are responsible for that, and your local council is responsible for that. And a lot of people should take notice that your local officials were very silent during this. Where were your freeholder boards, your commissioner boards, your local councils? Where were they speaking out on any of this in any way, shape, or form? So now we have 30+% of small businesses, specifically restaurants, closed. It will never open again. That's 30% of our economy is gone, or more. That number is probably low. 7,100 nursing home residents, poor souls lost because of Phil Murphy's arrogance, ignorance, and incompetence. Yet nobody wants to talk about that. There was a bipartisan push by Steve Sweeney and the Republicans to push for some type of investigation into this. Well, that just died on the vine. That just went away. At some point in time, Phil Murphy needs to answer for the 7,100 deaths that he caused in his nursing homes. Phil Murphy is a murderer. There's no other way of putting it. And that's a harsh thing to say, but being responsible for the death of another person makes you a murderer. And we're not talking about that. And the zombies that follow him, his people, nobody wants to talk about that. That's a talking point. That's a lie. Well, what did the president do? The president's responsible for 200,000. No, the president's not responsible for 200,000. The governor of the state of New Jersey, who sent COVID positive patients to nursing homes, is specifically responsible because of his policies. And that has to be spoken. He killed 7,100 people. He's killed 30+% of our economy. Money will never get back. Those people are out. They're small businesses that will never recover. Then we have the trickle-down theory from there. What happens to all the people that work there? All the employees, they're out of a job. Now you have the distributors who all sold to those businesses. They've lost business now. Everybody's going to lose on this, but nobody wants to take a look past the unconstitutional power grab of the governor in the name of safety. And was it really all about safety? Yeah, there's a virus. Yeah, it exists. People do get sick from it. People are dying from it. But if you look at the headlines every single day, no one's dying of anything else, apparently. Everyone's dying from complications to COVID. Well, you know, there's even a joke out there that the Tennessee bomber had COVID when he died. He didn't die being blown up. He had COVID. That's a sick and macabre joke, but that's where we're at today. You know, you see a headline for, you know, Mary Ann from Gilligan's Island passed away today at 82 from complications due to COVID. Well, she's 82. My best guess is she had some comorbidities. She got the thing. Unfortunately, she's in that high risk category. I'm not saying it's not specifically related, but that's the headlines you're going to see. You don't see the headlines of all the people who have recovered. We have a recovery rate of 97, 98%, depending on what you look at. We're not talking about that. You know, Phil Murphy does his moratoriums every day. Every day he does something, but never talks about the 7,100 that he's responsible for.
Very true, Tom. And all that's occurred this past year is indicative of what has occurred as a result of civics being eliminated in public education, civics being eliminated in university and institutions of higher learning. And that's why this year, 2021, coming up just in a few hours, the New Jersey Constitution Republicans, we're going to be offering civics courses, Civics 101 courses online the third Thursday of each month. And then we'll be meeting in person at the Ramada Inn in Vineland the fourth Thursday of each month with in-person civics classes. There'll be 12 classes, one for each month. Participants will be able to garner a certificate upon successful completion. And we believe that this really is the most important activity that we can engage in, you know, along with reforming the Republican Party back to its initial principles, but also teaching the citizen civics. You know, people say, well, what are civics? Civics is the study of the rights of the citizen. It allows this, it gives the citizen the knowledge of what his and her rights truly are. And then number two, it teaches the citizen how to be a good citizen, which encompasses self-governance, starting with managing and governing your own disposition and your own attitude and your own desires, and then translating that to the rest of society by doing what you're doing and serving as an executive director or running for a representative office or running for school board, or maybe being a writer, or maybe being a teacher, or producing videos, on it goes. But this is why we believe that it's so important at this time, as a result of all of the infringements on civil liberties. The people have to know what truly those liberties are, what those natural rights are, and then what they have to do in preserving them for themselves, as opposed to just relying on a candidate to do it for them. And we're excited that you're going to be joining us and helping us educate with these civics courses.
No, I'm looking forward to it. This is great. This is something is needed. I truly believe that. You know, when you look at what's happened look at people out there, the government schools have become more of an indoctrination center. And that's not hyperbole. That's the truth. We don't have an educated citizenry anymore. We have an indoctrinated citizenry, and it's due to these teacher unions and these feckless boards of education who have taken curriculum and completely and totally politicized it and dumbed it down to the point where people don't understand natural rights. They don't understand how the government is supposed to work. They don't understand their rights under the law. They just look at memes on social media and listen to nitwits, you know, making videos on TikTok and Snapchat and whatever nonsense that these people are looking at. And this is where
Mm-hmm.
we're at. This is why we have people saying, well, the government is taking care of us and I want my stimulus check. No, you don't want your stimulus check. You want to go back to work. You want your
Right.
employer to open up their business so you can go back to work. You want the
Mm-hmm.
restaurants to open up to full capacity so you can go and have a meal so that the servers at that restaurant can now make money so they can put the money back into the economy. They can go buy goods and services and the economy can continue to grow the way it's supposed to, not the government stimulating it with these absolutely insulting $600 checks. That's not going to infuse
Mm-hmm.
anything into any economy and get people
No.
off of the government dole at this point. And extending unemployment is not working. These people are going to, unfortunately, have now stagnated. These people need to get back into the workforce. The workforce needs to get back grinding again and creating dollars and then creating wealth and then creating opportunity, which then creates more wealth and that creates more opportunity. That's how our system's supposed to work. But because we've dumbed everybody down to believe that government is good and it's going to take care of us, I don't want the government anywhere near taking care of me. I want the government about as big as I can, as small as I can make it, and it just fits in an envelope next to a copy of the Constitution. That's where I want government to be. Provide for the common defense. Run the elections. You know what? Police departments, fire departments, let's run that. That's the common defense. That's what was talked about in the preamble. Okay? And we, the people, the individuals, we're supposed to take care of our posterity, not the government. That's our responsibility. And we've lost track of that. And it's time to bring it back. If we want to do it, we have to start with our own people, making sure our people get this and know this, and then they can go out and continue that education. And if it means standing up and being the only one in an entire room full of people at a board of education meeting, and letting them know, I don't like what you're doing and you need to go. So I'm going to run against you. And I'm going to push you out. So we have a curriculum for children that works and we can teach them. As the other component to this, we got to get our kids back into the classrooms. They can't be sitting at home for half days on Zoom calls all day long because they're missing critical skills. They're missing that discipline that you get from being in the classroom. They're missing that socialization that you miss from not being in the classroom. And I talk to teachers and these are family members. These are just people I know off the street. These are family members who are frustrated beyond belief. They don't want to be teaching from home. They want to be in the classroom with their kids. That's how they refer to them. They're my kids. They care deeply and passionately for these children. And that's what we want. They want their arms around them. They want them not only learning what's in the book, but you have to learn that Bobby and Susie can't poke each other in the eye. That's wrong and that's a no-no. You can't just get up and run around the room. You got to raise your hand and go, oh, excuse me, Miss Jones, can I go to the bathroom? Those are critical skills that our children will not learn. And they've not been learning it now since March. We're coming up on a year. We're losing a year of education with our children, a year of an economy we're losing. Enough has to become enough. And this is where education is key. That we say enough is enough. This ends when we say it ends, not because I say so on some kook fringe who just thinks he knows more. That's our Constitution. We, the people, get to tell the government what to do. Emergency or not, there's nothing in please someone show me in the Constitution where it says that, well, all this is your natural right under but it ends if there's an emergency. That's what I don't understand.
That's true. And Tom, you're making a lot of good points, of course. And I'd like to move on to another topic now. One of the impetus behind creating the constitutional Republican movement, and I know it has struck a nerve with you recently, and you wanting to become more involved, which we're thrilled about, is the frustration with what differentiates between a Republican and a Democrat. And this is something that we have been involved with since the very beginning. And my friend, Dr. Alan Gelzo, who is the foremost authority in the world on Abraham Lincoln, who is a who we mutually admired to a great degree. Of course, he is the founder, our founding father of the Republican Party. But over a year ago, Dr. Gelzo gave a speech at Hillsdale College with a couple other prominent speakers on the future of the Republican Party. Now, Dr. Gelzo is an historian, and he began his talk with saying that he thought it was interesting that they were asking someone who looks back to the past to help articulate the future of the Republican Party. And he gave a speech, a presentation on political culture. And I'm going to show on share screen the video. It's about 5 minutes of him actually introducing these points of political culture. And you and I discussed this on the radio on Saturday for our New Jersey Constitutional Republican Radio Hour.
You did.
And I know that you thoroughly enjoyed it. And now you're going to hear Dr. Gelzo give this presentation. And then after hearing it, we'll talk a little bit about the party platform that the Constitutional Republicans, our group, put out, because as you're well aware, Tom, 2016 was the last platform that was given. This year, there was no new platform put together, and we thought that was a rather unfortunate. So we put up our own platform. But we'll look at these points in political culture that clearly show, Tom, the distinction between Democrat and Republican. And give me a second here to get that up. Here we go. Let's see here. Okay. And Dr. Gelzo. And there we have it, Tom. Give me some of your thoughts on that. This is, I thought when I actually asked Dr. Gelzo when I was able to meet him if he would come and speak to this political culture. And this was before CCP virus came out. But there is a high likelihood that he may actually come down and meet with us this year and even and bring even greater in-depth study to these points. But I think this is a magnificent example of what distinguishes us from Democrats.
Well, agreed. And bringing people in, renowned experts, that adds to the cachet of what you're looking to do. And I'm very excited, not even to be a part of it. I want to sit and listen. I mean, the most important thing about what we do is we can learn something new every day. That's the beauty of knowledge, is that we surround ourselves with people who are more knowledgeable than ourselves, so we can become more knowledgeable, and then we can share that with other people. So I'm looking forward to that. But I mean, more to the point, you're right. The Republican Party did not put out a platform in 2020, which is typically what happens at the nominating convention, and the party platform is just part of it. There's a vast difference between Republicans and Democrats, and what I would like people to take away from, potential candidates to take away from, is that you need to make those contrasts very boldly. The contrast, you just can't be a little different. You can't be Democrat light. You can't be just a little different. You have to be completely and totally different than what's already out there. And embracing, the initial principles of the Republican Party, looking at it and being intellectually honest about things. That's what people really are looking for right now. Say what's on your mind. People are looking for intellectual honesty right now, because we're living in this world of platitudes, this world of polished speeches, and people just saying what they think you want to hear. And, you and I don't see eye to eye on our president right now on everything. But what you do is with President Trump is you get a very unvarnished opinion. He's just going to say it. And maybe it's, people say, well, that's not very presidential. We're looking for a little bit more of a Reagan-esque type of way of doing it. That's fine. I don't disagree with that. I can speak very Reagan-esquely myself. But sometimes, you need to make that bold statement, and you have to stiffen that spine a little bit. And I think people out there are looking for that, and they're looking for that from a Republican. They want you to have a little bit of that swagger now, and maybe have that, Reagan-esque way of putting exactly what Donald Trump would have to say, type of thing. But be yourself. Stand for something. Principle is very important. Stand on a principle. And that's how you're going to get elected. Don't tell people what you think they want to hear. Tell them the truth. Tell them what's on your mind. And remember, it's not your policy that you're pushing. It's the people's policy. You're a representative. And it's important. And making those bold contrasts are very important for potential candidates. And for those of us who just want to be part of explaining who we are and what we're about.
Tom, I want to get your insight now. I'm going to read 17 points. I'm not going to read all of the language, but I'm going to give you a pretty much a summary of each of the points. And then I'm going to try to equate Dr. Gelzo's ideas of Republican political culture with each one of them. Now, the first platform policy that we believe that should be instituted, that all Republicans can coalesce around, is number one, that we acknowledge that the purpose of American government from the local, state, and federal levels is derived specifically from the principles articulated in the Declaration of Independence, being the recognition of the laws of nature and nature's God, the equality of all mankind before God and natural law, the unchanging, called the unalienable, God-given natural rights of life, number one, liberty and property. and then the consent of those governed, guaranteeing the government's responsibility in solely securing the rights of those governed. And that would be our first Republican Party platform. And that would, of course, fall within Dr. Gelzo's analysis of enlightenment with the influences of John Locke and James Madison, and of course, Lincoln, who created the party based on the Declaration of Independence's great philosophical ideals. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it shouldn't just be Republicans that embrace that. That should be every elected representative should embrace that. That being said, our Democrat friends are not going to do that. They specifically don't believe in life. They don't believe in property, and they sure as heck don't believe in natural rights under God. If you look at what our Democrat governors have done, they've shut down churches and they've shut down meeting places. You're not allowed to congregate and give thanks. You're not allowed to congregate and share ideas. There's a reason for that. There's a reason, because this country was founded in public houses by men of God. That's the last thing that Democrats want, is for the churches and the public square to be available to average people, because that's where the sharing of ideas becomes real and the ideas become actual action. And that's how this country was founded. This was founded by imperfect men sitting around drinking and saying enough is enough. The Sons of Liberty were not they were not noble men. They were willing to go out and fight for what they needed. But it was in the name of God, and it was in the name of new country to do it. It's not just a coincidence that Gavin Newsom and Governor Cuomo and Governor Murphy want to shut down churches, and they've been sued over that and lost. They want to shut that down. Why is it that you can't go out and have a drink with your friends? Because then these ideas begin to flow. Stop. Enough is enough. So again, these are great.
So look, go ahead.
No, these are are great travesties that are happening, and they're happening with the people saying, just do them to me and it'll all be over in a little while. It won't. When's it going to end? This was 14 days to flatten the curve back in March. And 10 months in, Phil Murphy continues to extend his 30 days. So we end this when we end this. People don't have that spine. And look, you can't blame them. People are afraid. They think that the big hand of government's going to come down on them. They're going to be arrested. They're going to be fined. Their business will be closed down. But unless and until we do that and people say enough, they can't arrest everybody at some point in time. And enough is enough. We are in charge. It's not the thing that drives me crazy is people say, well, what is the Republican Party going to do about this? Well, what have you done about this besides complain about what the Republicans, aren't doing while the Democrats continue to do? Put the blame where it needs to be blamed. Go sit on your legislator's desk. Go into his office, her office. Sit there. Ask them why they won't vote on something. Don't complain to me. I'm out there every day trying to do it. The Republican Party in New Jersey is trying their best to do it. They've sued Governor Murphy multiple times. Senator Tester has been the lead counsel. He was even part of President Trump's legal team. Right. Panaccio, Tester brought, legislation up that won't be voted on to curtail Phil Murphy. Democrats won't even vote on it. That's
right, Tom. So that first party platform is something that all Republicans need to know and learn and understand. And if they do, as we hearken back to the Declaration as Lincoln did, we will reach the greater number of people. We will speak to the middle class, which is the class that is most populous in the nation. These ideas of the principles of the Declaration of Independence will resonate with a far greater number of voters, but Republicans need to know what they are. So that's where we come in with the education aspect of it. Now, the second platform, the first platform talks about the preeminence of the Declaration of Independence's principles. The second platform is reestablishing the instrument by which the principles of the Declaration of Independence are provided, being the United States Constitution and state constitutions. The Constitution stipulates the specific and limited enumerated responsibilities of the legislative, the executive, and judicial branches of government. The structure provided by the Constitution, identifying the separation of powers and the properly intended duties faithfully exercised by each branch accordingly, offers each individual citizen of the United States the best protection of their natural rights and successfully limits the power of government to infringe upon an individual's natural rights. So what we're saying here is that we need to restore the structure of the Constitution as it was written by Madison, in highlighting the enumerated limited responsibilities of each branch, working within the specific constitutional requirements that they are given. It's because we've gotten away from the structure of the Constitution, and each one of the specific duties of the branches, which have basically been conglomerated, and many have been weakened. The Congress has been weakened, the executive branch has been given more power, the judicial branch is given the most power. And this is completely upside down from which it was intended. So the idea is that as Republicans, constitutional Republicans, are calling for the restoration of the structure and the strength of the Constitution as it was written. What do you think of that?
I mean, there's this idea out there that the Constitution is some type of living, breathing document that needs to be changed from time to time. And it was even Justice Scalia that made it perfectly clear that it's not. It's a legal document. It exists in its form. It's not to be changed or interpreted. It says what it says, and that's originalism. Right. And that's what you want to look for in a legislator. That's what you want to look for in a judge, a jurist, anyone, a true conservative. The Constitution gives not us the rights; it limits government. It's not an enumeration of the rights of the people. It's an enumeration of the limitations that the people give to government. And that's the one thing that we've missed, and we ourselves as keepers of the Constitution have allowed government to take away from us. They give us our rights back. And that's not the way it's supposed to be.
Right, and we could have multiple shows on the rest of the principles and the platform that we put together, and you can see, our audience can see, pinned to the top of our New Jersey Constitutional Republicans Facebook group page, that video where you can see the actual 17 points, and we'll just conclude that part of our conversation, Tom, with those two as the top, as the 1 and 2 party platform principles. Number one, the restoration of the Declaration of Independence, and then the restoration of the Constitution that protects those principles. So that would be 1 and 2. But I wanted to read to you, Tom, and get your input. We've been talking to Professor John Schaff. We've had 4 or 5 conversations with him on virtual conversations with him. He is a professor at Northern University in South Dakota, and he has written a book that I became familiar with as a result of talking to Dr. Gelzo. And he has written a book that I believe provides a foundation for reformation and restoring the party back into the image of Abraham Lincoln. He's written this book called Abraham Lincoln's Statesmanship and the Limits of Liberal Democracy. And in chapter 2, he writes Lincoln and the Defense of Natural Rights. This, of course, is what galvanized Lincoln during the Lincoln-Douglas debates and defending natural rights going back to the Declaration of Independence, which, of course, provides the foundation for our Republican Party. But bear with me. This is a little bit lengthy. It'll be a couple minutes, but I want you to read. I want you to listen and then give me your thoughts on this, because we could have a little bit of a controversy here, but that's good. It'll encourage people to think. But anyway, Abraham Lincoln's dedication to 2 essential political virtues, prudence and moderation. These are virtues for any statesman, but especially, it seems, for the Democratic statesman. precisely because these virtues help mitigate the vice to which democratic government is most prone, namely the blind worship of majority rule. The democratic statesman must cultivate these virtues to a high degree. Lincoln understood that a democratic statesman cannot safely ignore public opinion. Rather, it was the leader's task to shape that opinion towards justice. True statesmen must be one step ahead of public opinion, but not 10 steps. They must take opinion into account while not being obsequious to it or ignorant of it. This is an art form that eludes most politicians, especially in our day when the placibitory nature of our politics makes deliberation and reasoned argument difficult to sustain. So prone are we to indulging in the politics of spectacle, soundbite, and entertainment. The poll-driven nature of contemporary American politics, stoked by media that require constant news to fill the 24-hour cycle, makes it difficult for politicians and citizens alike to be patient and deliberate when assessing any particular controversy. The emphasis on polls only enhances the notion that public opinion must rule, whether that opinion is well or ill considered. No one typifies these pathologies more than Donald Trump, who runs his presidency more like the professional wrestling television shows he used to frequent than as the head of the executive branch of the American government. Always leave them wanting more. Now, Tom, what are your thoughts on that segment?
Well, look, I've touched on it a little bit. We as Republicans need to have that swagger of Donald Trump, and maybe a little bit more of that tone of Ronald Reagan. That Irish charm that he had, that way, he could smile and cut you down to size at the same time. But the same token, I have no problem, with a little bit of smash mouth. There's nothing wrong with, metaphorically, grabbing your opponent by the throat and letting him know, you're done. I'm taking your office away from you, and we're done with this nonsense. And that's, that's the swagger that Donald Trump has brought to the Republican Party, and you can see that in his supporters and how and what they're looking for from the Republican Party moving forward. Representative Matt Gaetz of Florida the other day said that he's no longer a member of the old Republican Party. He's now a member of the Trump Republican Party. And Gaetz has been a tremendous supporter of the president. Now, he holds himself a little more of the Reagan style versus the Trump style in speaking. But by the same token, it's you see this new crop coming in of new freshmen members of the House and Senate, Republican members of the House and Senate. They've got that Trump swagger to them. And I fully embrace that. And I think that that's important to have. The old days of speak softly and carry a big stick are gone. It's speak boldly and carry a bigger stick at this point. Again, that might be the controversy that you and I may not see eye to eye on, but it's time. We've cowered in the corner here in New Jersey. We'll speak about New Jersey. Republicans in New Jersey continue to cower in the corner and look to be Democrat light, and they want to be liked. That's the number one thing that Republicans do in this state, nationally as well, but specifically in New Jersey, they want to be liked. The opinion poll. Are you going to call me a name? Are you going to pull out the dreaded race card? That's you can't govern by that. You have to govern based on principle. You have to govern based on the Constitution. You have to govern based on your constituency, what your constituency wants. And Phil Murphy, that this is where I'll tie this all in with a bow. Phil Murphy is emboldened by his fake news 70% approval rating on his handling of this pandemic. That's why he's doing what he's doing, because the people out there who are ill-educated, I don't say uneducated, they're ill-educated, who believe that government is a good thing and everything that they do, believe that they're going to be saved by Phil Murphy and the Democrats. That's where his fake news is taking him. So he's emboldened by it. If his polling had him in the 40s on this, with these lockdowns would be gone pretty quickly. His nonsense would be over. But we continue down the road of public opinion. And Republicans, unfortunately, in New Jersey see that and they don't want to go up against it. And that's not where we should be. I think we should be a little bit more vocal in how we handle this. And it's a fair criticism, I think, of the overall Republican Party that we haven't been vocal enough during these 10 months. I've been vocal about it personally as a member of the Republican Party. So I think it's a fair argument. It's time for other Republicans to step up and be a little bit more vocal.
Right, and I have no objection, of course, about being vocal about the principles of the Declaration and the restoration of the Constitution and the restoring of our initial Republican principles. Now, I will say, in fairness to President Trump, he is the product of the FDR's influence on the presidency, which forever changed the office of president, beginning with Woodrow Wilson, and then became into fruition under FDR, forever changing the office from away from Madison's intent of Article 2 and what the Constitution prescribed for the president, and this has created an unrealistic view of what the president can do, and looking at him as this national leader who has to save us from all these things and has to legislate and everything but actually do what he was intended constitutionally to do, which was to execute the laws Congress passed, to have the veto power and to be the commander in chief in a time of war, and also to negotiate foreign treaties. Now the president has to fight COVID, and he has to provide stimulus, and he has to do all these things that we've talked about with Professor Schaff that have become completely unrealistic. And Ronald Reagan, of course, was the exception to all this because he believed in much smaller government. He was the first president really to take on the idea of the administrative and bureaucratical state. But the one thing that I will say, Tom, is that I believe that it's very important that we require all of our representatives, including the president, to have a constitutional literacy, to know what the principles are from the Declaration, which all Republicans should do, and then have a constitutional literacy, knowing what all 7 articles are about, how the government was intended to be run as Madison and the founders intended it, and not just say, well, we need a businessman. We need a businessman as the president. We need constitutional Republicans as president. We need constitutional Republicans on the school board, on the freeholder board, representing us in the state house, representing us in Washington. We need Republicans that are knowledgeable of the Constitution, because that Constitution, and this is what I say, don't look to the man to save you. I think that we've gotten into this Trump syndrome where we have depended upon him to save us. He's our savior, Trump. No, the Constitution is the savior. And that transcends time, place, and personality. And I have not liked the direction that the party has gone in becoming a cult of personality, rather than the party of the Constitution, which stands there like a rock, like the Statue of Liberty out there in the harbor, enduring the wind and the rain and the pounding of the weather day in and day out, just the way the Constitution does, the onslaught that's given it from the Democratic Party and unfortunately our own Republican Party in a great degree too. But that's why I think we need to get back to the Constitution, restore its preeminence, and that's of course comes prerequisite first from the acknowledgement and the restitution of the principles of the Declaration, and that's pretty much my synopsis of the whole situation. I said from the very beginning, Tom, when President Trump, who was my 16th out of 17th pick, incidentally, only John Kasich was worse, that Donald Trump reminds me of my all-time favorite movie, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. He's got good, He's got bad and he's got a lot of ugly. And unfortunately, there was too much Tuco in Trump's 4 years, and there should have been more Clint Eastwood and Blondie. And I think he would have easily won re-election if he would have sounded more like Lincoln in his second inaugural when he said malice towards none and charity to all. I think he would have won in a landslide if somebody could have gotten through to him and his ego, his megalomaniac ego, and said, listen, be the president, be a great president. This is your legacy. You can do it. But he was unable to do it. He was ill-equipped.
Well, to that end, and we talk about the 17 people up on that stage. Mr. Trump was not my first choice. I worked very hard for Ted Cruz, being part of his South Jersey team here, being a delegate to the convention for Ted Cruz. That's where you talk about the rock rib conservative in that race, and that's where I was. I gave newly elected President Trump. I said, I have to look at this. I voted for him. I wouldn't vote for Hillary. I wouldn't bolt the party.
As I did too, twice.
And I said I would give him the first 100 days. I said, I have to be honest about it. He's now the leader of my party. He's now the leader of my country. Let's give the man a chance. And I gave him a chance, and he did. He fulfilled his campaign promises, and he brought again, I'll use the word swagger, back to the Republican Party. It made you feel good about being a Republican again. But you're absolutely correct. We have to move away sometimes from the histrionics and the theater and go back to being, again, the party of Lincoln, the party of Reagan. And we have to be statesmen. You have to be able to speak to people so people know that you speak with authority. And yeah, you should have that big stick, and you have to have that. But we also have to have that way of speaking, not as an authoritarian, but you speak with authority on that subject where people look at you and go, wow, this guy, this girl, they know what they're talking about. And they really do have something about them where they care. And it's coming from from the heart at that point. You're not just reading from a script. You're not part of an infomercial. You're not just going with public opinion. You speak your heart to people, and people will accept you for it, as Reagan did and as Lincoln did. Both cared very deeply for this country. Both cared very deeply for the people of this country. Both were shot. Lincoln ultimately assassinated, and then assassination attempt on Reagan because of those beliefs. And that's important. And if they're not shooting at you, apparently you're not doing something right. So we definitely agree on that. We need to bring that statesman way of speaking and understanding the Constitution. And that's why I reached out to you when you started talking about this, and I've seen the direction of where the party's going with the walkaway people, former Democrats coming in and talking about how they want to reform the party. The whole argument of this person's a rhino and that person's not constitutional enough, that person's not conservative enough, that we're still the Republican Party. And this whole idea that you're lesser has to stop. What it comes down to is we need to go back to the initial principles, back to the party of Lincoln and what it meant. So that's why I reached out to you. I'm like, you know what? I can't bang my head against the wall anymore. I'm going to jump in with both feet with you because you asked. You're looking. You see, I need someone to help me. Well,
that's right.
You cast your net, and that's what you got. So, hope And
I got William Tecumseh Sherman.
That's what you're going to get, and I'm going to make New Jersey hell if we have to. But that's the way it has to be.
That's right. That's what he would make the South howl, and that's what he did. And Tom, I think that's a great way to conclude our discussion today. It's been a real pleasure. We're going to have you back on, of course, again very soon because there's a lot to talk about. And I really appreciate you joining me for the show, and especially wanting to join the Constitutional Republican movement and being the field general and that you're going to be, and taking up your end of the army, if you will, and seeing to it that we will restore the initial principles of the Republican Party, and that we will do as what the principles of the Declaration identify. We treat everyone equally. We believe everybody should be treated equally before the law. Everyone should be given due process, and we need to hold our elected representatives accountable to the Constitution. And the Constitution is what we put our faith and trust in, and that doesn't change. So, Tom, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you again that you're going to be joining me with this endeavor.
Well, very happy to be here. Very excited to be working with you. Looking forward to it. Again, if we can just reach one person at this point, and they can reach one person, and that's how it's going to work. I'm very excited to do it. So thank you for for having me. Thank you for having faith in the work that I've done and wanting to do more. Have a prosperous new year. Have a very healthy new year, and looking forward to really getting started after the first.
Great, Tom. Thank you so much. And we will be indeed coming out all barrels blazing in January. And Happy New Year to you, Tom, and your family. And I will be back on at 7 o'clock. Salim Trice will be joining me for a virtual conversation. He's a remarkable speaker and powerful articulator, and he is a great defender of justice. He is in Virginia, and he'll be joining me, and we're looking forward to that conversation. But thank you so much, Tom. Thank you to our audience. Please like and share this video with as many people as you can share it with. We want people to learn and to listen and to join the Constitutional Republican movement. And as we conclude, let us remember what Abraham Lincoln said: liberty for all. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tom.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.